Hello, Secret Keepers. Do you hear that? It's the song of success. I wanna be the very best, like Kai Buddy long ago. To tap lands is my real test. To draw them, well, I hope so. I will draw all the lands. Wait, no, just enough to teach my family to understand the prize pool is that high. MTG, professionally, I totally did waste my team's MTG. Oh, let me draw my lands, but please God, not too many. MTG. That's right, today, folks, we are talking to rising star in the competitive Match of the Gathering scene, David Shank, aka Shank Pig, about his road to the Pro Tour. So that and so much more on today's episode of the Moth Studios Super Secret Podcast. Shh, shh. Don't tell anybody about the singing. Welcome back to the show, Secret Keepers. I'm your host, Socrates in the street, Plato in the sheets, Joel Watts, as always joined by
amateur historian and podcaster, Danny.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, great history lesson last time, Danny. I think we'll probably talk a little bit about that here in just a moment, but I want to also introduce our guest today. Today we are joined by David Shank, aka Shank Pig, on the socials. What's up today, David?
Not much. It's just another day. Really excited to be here with you guys. It's a really busy time for me, as you know, because I'm preparing for the U.S. Regional Championship in Denver, which is my chance to qualify for the Pro Tour.
Nice. Yeah, and we're going to be talking all about the Pro Tour today with you and your journey through Magic the Gathering, as well as how the competitive path to Magic has changed since the dissolution and reinstitution of the Pro Tour. And maybe we'll get into some high-level takes on X-Seekers of Fortune as well. But before we get into all that seriousness, let's get a silly question out of the way, sort of loosen things up. Sound good, guys?
Is it going to be sillier than that intro?
No, actually.
A spectacle to behold.
If anything, this is actually like a fairly serious question of the week.
Okay, well
yes,
then
Danny?
Let's get this out of the way here real quick. So yeah, like that was very unexpected. Joel blindsided us with that. He insisted that we do not look at his show notes, and then laid that on us. And it was probably the most exciting thing that's going to happen to me this year. So it's all downhill from here.
Well, no, Danny, we're going up. This is unlocked something inside of me. The
Our
production value of this podcast. Yes, our stock is rising.
All right. Well, Shank's here to bail us out, so let's hear the question.
All righty. So this week's question, pretty easy. You know, you have that competitive spirit inside of you, Shank, and I think Danny and I, you know, we're both designers and competitors in our own right. So we might as well. What do we have inside of us? What is our, as they say, spirit animal that we grasp onto in order to, you know, unlock the eye of the tiger? Shank, what is your spirit animal?
So this may be an unexpected answer for you guys, but my spirit animal is actually the hedgehog.
Oh, really?
And
we got to go fast.
That is because when I was younger, I was a little stockier, had a little bit of a ball shape to me, and had super spiky hair. So my family would endearingly call me Hedgie as a little nickname.
I love it.
And yeah, I always had a little stuffed animal hedgehog as a kid, and I've loved hedgehogs always. They're so cute. So yeah, that's my spirit animal.
Nice.
So when you think of a hedgehog, you're probably one of the few Americans who thinks of the actual animal versus the blue, you know, the blue lightning bolt Sonic. The Hedgehog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
Go ahead, Danny.
Well, I was going to ask about the pig. Like, where does the pig enter the equation?
Yeah, so Shank Pig comes from an old username I used to have on all my online accounts, and that username was Goat Pig, and that came because my best friend growing up, who I played all these different online games with, his username was always Goose. And I saw Goose. I was like, I want a farm animal too. So I'm going to do Goat Pig. That's available. And so Goat Pig's just stuck with me since I was like 8 years old. And then when I was going to create my personal brand, I was like, well, I kind of want to have something that's attached to my real name in there. So I'll just, instead of Goat Pig, I'll do Shank Pig. And that's how it was born.
Love it.
All right. No, that makes a lot of sense. See, I thought you were actually going to go with pig. A pig. I was like going to be like, that's very interesting. But the hedgehog strikes me out of nowhere. Now, my brother was so into Sonic the Hedgehog, or maybe even more so Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't want. I fear I'm about to face a libel suit by saying that publicly, but we'll see. But my brother was so into Sonic that we actually got a hedgehog. And my family does not have the best relationships with Hedgehog because that little guy was a complete jerk. And it was like very hard to take care of. We it's like we got one with an attitude. We got a true Shadow. We didn't get a Sonic.
There you go.
But you seem much
to be
more,
fair, I've never had a real hedgehog as a pet. I've just had like 50 stuffed animal hedgehogs. So
yeah,
I didn't know
I'm not
that
really
they were
qualified to speak
around.
on.
Like for pets, I didn't realize that was like even something that you could easily acquire. You just get it at like a normal pet store.
I don't remember where we got it exactly. I presume it was like a PetSmart situation, but I'm sure it's like somewhere. It's slightly up the exotic trek. I wouldn't recommend anybody get exotic pets after all the exposure we've had through Tiger King and things like that. It's just like we've already sorted out the animals that want to coexist with us. Let's just stick with those.
My favorite is like that one guy who like was found dead in his like truck in like a Home Depot parking lot, and like he had like a pet cobra that had escaped. It's like, I don't know what you're doing with a cobra in a truck in a Home Depot parking lot, but it seems
exactly.
Like bunch of poor decision making leading up to that event.
Yeah. There's just no reason for anybody to have a cobra. Like one of our biggest fears as humans is being locked in the same room as a snake and to purposely put the snake inside of your car, unless it was an assassination. Don't count that out. Somebody could have thrown that cobra into the truck and he didn't expect it. Rattlesnake in the mailbox style.
That's true. How many people do you think have been assassinated by random stake placement? Is that like a thing? You think that happens a lot?
I feel like the invention of like first the knife and then the gun probably brought that figure down immensely. It's like, oh wait, this is so much easier. But I think there was a time in human history where, you know what? I'm going to get this guy and I'm going to throw a snake in his bedroom and he's not going to see it coming. Like,
you think that
it's like
people had bedrooms before they had knives?
Yes. They didn't call them bedrooms, but they were the room that you went in to sleep.
Like the cave? Like a burrow? Okay. All right. Shank's like, I don't know what this podcast is about anymore.
See, I think it's like
about
a low, inconsistent kill rate because the snake, you don't know what it's going to do. Maybe it like goes after the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so it's like, I don't know what.
Why do you think we invented the knife?
Someone's like, we need a more efficient snake. Here's what I got.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. It took me a long time. I rubbed rock against other rock for many hours, but it can take off somebody's head. Okay, so we got the hedgehog from David. Danny, do you want to go next? Your animal.
Yeah, this is gonna be a hot take for some portion of the audience, but I am going to choose like a person, just like a human.
A human?
Oh wow!
Your spirit animal's a human.
Yeah, maybe Charles Darwin, but maybe a different one. I don't know.
Oh, was that more of like a spiritual mentor?
No. He's my spirit animal.
Okay, Darwin.
So what about him over like a wolf?
Over like a wolf?
Or Albert Einstein.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like his beard would be like really fun to play with, and it would give me something to do while I'm waiting to see whether or not my snake assassination attempt is a success, or if I need to find another cobra.
I think we have different I guess theories about the metaphysical spiritual world, because I would think you couldn't play with Charles Darwin's beard, but I guess we might have read different text on that one.
You don't think that his beard
Darwin.
is available for playing with in the spirit realm? Like, what's going on?
It would be a spiritual beard.
Yeah.
Not a physical
Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of go with the Star Wars, ghostly, thing where it's like, yeah, if you reached up to the beard, you would just pass through it. But maybe if you yourself are on the spiritual plane with him, through meditation, deep meditation, then maybe you could interact.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely some astral projection going on in that beard play.
That reminds me, I had a friend who loved it when we would just hang out on the couch and I would just play with his hair, just like scratching his head and stuff. It kind of reminds me of that. And yeah, that's a very comforting thing that I think not enough, guys do together. Play with your dude friend's hair, rub their scalp. It'll make y'all happy. That's like what the
Those feel
cavemen
good.
would do,
Head
right?
massages are great.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I
great.
know. And totally, just totally like cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, I have to admit, you kind of stole a little bit of my thunder there, because I decided to look up a fact, and I was also going to choose humans, because you know who the biggest predator of eagles are?
Joel.
Humans.
Yes. But,
The Tiger King.
I mean, in all seriousness, I think this has come up before, and I do very much relate to bears. Bears are... their sleeping patterns, just the fact that they're, they get fed and they protect their kids and then they sleep. It just seems like the perfect life, perfect existence. They maul Leonardo DiCaprio in the woods violently. Yeah, I think I can be down with being a bear, or pulling upon the strength of a bear.
So what's up with this? Neither of you said moth.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
What's up with the moth?
The moth has always been somewhat of a random assignment. By the time we got to naming the company, we were so exhausted from naming things in the game that we more or less were like, the first thing that we heard that we were like, yeah, we can go with that. We went with. We didn't like. There's not like some great like symbolic story. Like, we've come up with a lot to explain what we think about the moth now, but a lot of it is. Post hoc, what is it when you come up with your explanation after the fact, to justify your decision? That's a lot of what's going on here.
All right, got you. I mean, it's a
I
sweet
would
logo,
argue that. I was just going to say that I would argue that most human decision making is post hoc. We do something and then we justify it later. But I think it was like within the same conversation. Like we had like a list of things. We were just rattling off like things that sounded good together. Mega Moth came up. We moved away from it for like 30 minutes, and one of us was just like, wasn't Mega Moth a really good one? And we were like, yeah, it was. And I think before we had locked it in, we were like, yeah, because we could see like a moth in front of, like, the thing was, it was like a moth in front of a light with the shadow being cast behind it being huge, and that's like what creates the Mega Moth. And I don't know how
cool.
quickly. In my brain, it's like we decided once we came up with that imagery, it was like, okay, we can lock in on the Mega Moth. But I think, the way that, in case you haven't heard the story through one of our other shows, I'm sure we said it before, but, that is like our feeling towards playing games. Like when you sit down to play a game, you're taking the seed and becoming something bigger than yourself, or something you can't really be in real life, in Magic, a planeswalker, in our game, an adventurer. So in Dungeons and Dragons, you could become a dwarf cleric who can heal the sick and raise the dead. So that's sort of like that idea of like the shadow you cast behind you is bigger than yourself when you're sitting at the table.
Ever dreamed of embarking on legendary quest, unlocking hidden secrets, and discovering untold riches? Dive into the world of X Seekers of Fortune. It's the game that's soon to be taking the internet by storm. Sign up today at xseekersoffortune.com and start your journey to greatness. Remember, fortune favors the bold. See you there.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, I think we're ready to get into the main topic today, Shank, David. Thank you for joining us. And so, in case the audience didn't surmise from this, you are a person who's playing Magic at the competitive level, and you're on your way, and potentially an event away from joining the Magic the Gathering Pro Tour. So we just kind of wanted to walk through your journey, and also see where things are with the competitive scene of Magic, because I know it's gone through some, some tribulations in the past, few years, especially through the COVID pandemic and the acquisition of Wizards of the Coast by Hasbro. So we just wanted to see where things were and where they are now. But why don't we start out with your origin story, David? We always like to, kind of bring it back down to like how you got started. So I always like to ask, did you grow up in a gaming family?
Yeah, I did. I grew up in a board game family. So
Okay.
since I was young, I always played board games with my family, and me and my brother would play video games. So it was always like it was always kind of like me and my brother were hiding from my parents, trying to play the video games as much as we could because we just loved it, and they were getting tired of how much time we were spending on that.
They're like, get down here and play Monopoly with the rest of the family.
Or just like, hey, get the hell outside. Stop playing so many games.
Yeah.
So
what were some of the games that your board game family was playing with y'all?
So we played Monopoly. I think the first kind of intro to strategy games was like Settlers of Catan. And that was when I was really young. I was like 8 or 9, I think. And then my mom's best friend, she and her family were a big board game family, and they introduced us to this game called Agricola. Have you guys heard of it?
No, what is that?
No, I haven't.
So Agricola is a worker placement game. It's also kind of like an engine building game, and the theme is you are a farmer in like the Middle Ages or something, and you're trying to build this farm up. You can collect sheep, you can collect cattle, you can grow crops, you can expand your house. So it was this very complex strategy board game, and that's kind of where my infatuation with strategy games began and where I kind of got hooked on that competitive side of things.
Awesome. So would you consider Agricola to be your favorite game before you discovered Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, it might be my favorite board game of all time.
Ooh.
Wow.
Is it
that's
available to play
high
online?
praise.
So it's interesting. So it was definitely a physical game first, but because I was so into it, I did find this online community that had created it online, similar to how you have Tabletop Simulator, but it was even more rudimentary than that. So I was playing it online with people because I wanted to get better and like beat my family next time I played them. So
Just grinding for the family game night.
pretty much, yeah.
I love it.
I was like 14.
Dang. Okay. So you that definitely explains like you've been spiky for a while. Hence the hedgehog.
Absolutely. There you go.
Well,
If I can just ask real quick, Joel, before we move on, and I'm sorry if I missed this. So, what is the flavor of Agricola?
It's farmers. It's like
Okay.
1800s farmers.
Gotcha. Okay.
is it like European or American farmers?
Yeah, it's like European. It's hard to tell if it's like Middle Ages or like like early Renaissance, but it's like very. You feel like a small farmer with very few resources. Like this isn't like
Subsistence farming at its best.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's not like you have your 30 plows mowing across the lane. It's like you got basic materials.
Yeah.
I like the sound
You're having kids in order to like, diversify your worknote, I'm sure.
No, exactly. That's a mechanic. You can have kids and then you get more workers. And that was actually my like keynote. That was my signature strategy is I was build out the maximum family slot as fast as possible. And then I would have this huge army of workers to do stuff with.
Just,
He likes to get busy. The 14
Yeah,
wants to get
there's-
busy. Yeah.
the more fields to plow than just the one outside.
Oh god.
All right.
There you go.
One second.
We should definitely play that game if we can find it. I think that would be a fun one to play with Kia as well. It sounds like there's some interesting mechanics to
Yeah, because
It's
would
a
you
great
say
game.
it's what is it? Settlers of Catan like it's almost like the farmer version of Settlers, or like at that level?
It's definitely more advanced than Settlers of Catan.
Oh, okay.
It's a complex board game. Like, obviously you guys would pick it up, but for someone who's never played a big board game before, it might be a little hard to pick up. But for someone who's played lots of board games before, yeah, you can pick it up pretty easy. There's a lot of rules.
You'd be shocked by how few board games we've played. I think a lot of people should play a lot more board games. I've never played Settlers of Catan.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting to play games now because of TikTok. Like we randomly ended up on Board Game TikTok, so I feel obligated to start playing more games. Joel's played more than I have, I think, but he's played Settlers.
Yeah, I have a few, I have like friends who our primary way of, interacting is playing games. So they've definitely introduced me to ones like, I've played Codenames, I've played Settlers of Catan, I played Red Dragon Inn.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's just a great game. I would highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, I'm going to be looking out for it because that definitely sounds like a little hidden gem right there. I love the idea of I'm a big, the reason we love MTG is because it's kind of at the core a resource management game, and this sounds like literally a resource management game.
100%.
One of the things I love about Magic, and something that we took as major inspiration when we were making X Seekers of Fortune, will continue to do so, is just the idea that everything is a resource. I think one of the biggest level up moments in Magic is when you realize life is just a resource, and it doesn't matter whether you have 20 life or 1 life, as long as you have cards left in your deck and your opponent either is milled out or lifeless. And
totally.
Protecting life arbitrarily, I think, is something you do a lot when you're early on. You're like, oh no, I don't want to lose any of my life. And it's like, yeah, take it. I don't care. I'm just progressing my game plan.
Early on, you see that as who's winning the game.
Yeah.
Whoever has more life is winning. But that's not the reality.
No, it's definitely not.
I think when you go up against your first...
I have a similar analog with X Seekers of Fortune, where I think early I saw whoever has more adventures completed is winning, but that's not how I see the game now. There's more nuance to it than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
a multivariable equation that you have to run.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely have a lot of questions I'd like to pick your brain about on that topic later, but I would like to continue along Joel's line of questioning here because he's interrogator in chief.
Well, no, thank you, counselor. Well, I guess to bridge us into the main topic, at what age did the Devil's Cardboard call you?
So the Devil's Cardboard was at my doorstep for a while because my older brother, I have one sibling, older brother, he's 3 years older than me. He had just some random Magic cards lying around when I was 8 or 9, and he didn't really know how to play, I think, but I think he just got them at the store, a couple booster packs. So I, from an early age, had seen the artwork and thought it was cool. When I really got into the game was my senior year of high school. I was 18, and one day at school, I just heard some friends talking about Magic and talking about, hey, I just beat Colby with my elf deck, with my goblin deck. And I was like, wait a minute, Magic? My friends are playing Magic? I kind of know how to play this game. I'm good at games. I can be cool. I can play with them. Maybe I can beat them. And so that was when I really started playing. I would just hang out with 4 or 5 friends on a Saturday, and all day we would just play Magic. And since I was getting in so many reps with it, I really started to learn the rules, and I got curious, this is so complicated. I don't know everything. And that's where I started to learn all the rules and develop a taste for the competitive side of Magic.
Do you know what those booster packs were that your brother had? Do you know what set it was from?
He had stuff from Mirrodin, 7th edition, maybe even Homelands. It was pretty early.
That's cool.
Oh, wow. So you did have the diversity of the old card frames and the newer card frames, or the
I did, yeah. I think
edition?
I still have some basic lands in my collection that have the white border.
What was your first favorite card?
My first favorite card was Fusion Elemental. It's white, blue, black, red, green for a vanilla 8/8. And I just thought it was so cool that it had every color of mana in it. I was like,
Oh,
this
man.
is a thing. And I built a whole deck that was just based on getting 5 colors of mana so I could cast my 5 mana 8/8.
That's a straight
how
up early
often did that
Magic player
happen?
deck.
Yeah. Did you actually get to cast the Fusion Elemental with that deck, or was it just a pipe dream?
Absolutely, yeah. But then they
Yeah.
used a 2 mana removal spell on it. I lost the game, but whatever.
What would be a good one? The Terror, a casual.
Exactly.
I don't think Terror can
No.
target non-black or black. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Oh,
I
you're
think
correct.
You
It
would
is a
need,
black
go for the
creature,
throat or
so-
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or terminate.
Okay.
Terminate. Yeah, terminate would get it done.
Or murder.
You could-
3
or
mana.
path,
Murder.
just path them.
Path Exile.
Swords to Plowshare.
playing-
You go play Agricola.
Get out of here.
That should be the text on Swords to Plowshare from here on out. Create a sub game of Agricola, and the winner of that game gets to come back to this game with and pull a land out of their deck, like search for a basic land to put into play after you've played a full game of Agricola.
Plow target field.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, because this is something that always fascinates me. The journey from starting Magic the Gathering to like feeling like you're at a level where you can actually play the real game of Magic the Gathering. So for me, I started, I think it was like either junior year. Like everybody came back from Christmas break and they had all dipped back into their Magic. Their Magic addiction, essentially. They had all started playing again after they had stopped in middle school. And I had wanted to learn to play for many years, just like you. I had cards around, nobody to teach me. Magic the Gathering is not an easy game to learn on your own. And there's not that many resources out there to learn. So finally I had people who were playing. I went home and made a 75 green, or like basically a 75 card deck with every green and red spell I had, and probably not enough land. But over the course of like that semester, I went from playing, kitchen table Magic, or lunchroom table Magic, I should probably say, to playing at a point where I was being, talked to by the people who played standard competitively, and like they were actually showing me like that next level. And then I shortly after got my first girlfriend and put the game down for a few too many years. But how long would you say it took you from being like, kitchen table to like F&M capable?
Yeah, so it's an interesting arc for me. So I learned the basics of like casting spells and creature combat around when I was 14 or 15, end of middle school. So maybe 13 or 14. And
Okay.
that was with my friend Goose. Actually, we played just the two of us, and we played with my brother a little bit. But that was very rudimentary. It was I kind of saw it as just like another board game at that point. It was just made out of cards, not a board. So
Yeah.
similar to Agricola. And it was fun, but I put it down for a while. So then it was put it down for a few years. And then that was when, senior year of high school, I was 18. That's when kind of my ramp up to competitive started. So I think I heard my friends talking about Magic for the first time at school early my senior year. So sometime August, September. By March, April of the next year, I was going to F&M drafts, playing with friends there, winning some drafts, going 3-0 at some drafts, and really just like diving into the competitive scene as much as I could.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we're about to get into go hard and heavy on the competitive scene, but I think there's a couple more questions just to endear you to the Magic audience, especially the more casual Magic audience that we kind of wanted to cover. We've sort of talked about your first favorite card and things like that, but we might as well ask, what is your color identity as a person in Magic the Gathering?
So for me, it's absolutely green because I grew up in a very rural area that was surrounded by forests.
Oh, nice.
And so the forest has always been like a safe space for me, where if something was going on at home or at school, I could kind of just run into the woods and feel just embraced by the trees and the squirrels and the birds. And
Nice.
So in Magic, I've always gravitated towards green creature decks, generated a bunch of mana. I've always loved that stuff.
So here's a question that is a little off topic, but did you ever see anything crazy in the woods?
I one time got lost in a park because I went off trail like usual, and a deer ran like 4 feet in front of me in thick bush. So I didn't see it coming. It just went like, wow. And if it knocked into me, it would have like, I don't know, hit me on my ass really bad. That's one of the craziest things I've seen.
Okay.
Darn. We were hoping for Bigfoot, but we'll take a really
I've been
close
watching
deer.
a lot of Bigfoot videos. I've been watching a lot of Bigfoot videos.
Your son is
Sadly,
like on a
I've not
Bigfoot kick,
seen
isn't
that.
he?
Yeah, he is. I've been listening to Bigfoot Society podcast and watching a bunch of random videos of fuzzy brown fur at a distance with a shaky camera and glowing eyes in the night. People howling, you know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I was hoping David would drop a bomb on us, but no Bigfoot evidence, huh?
No.
Sadly not.
What's your favorite green creature?
Yeah.
Ooh, favorite green creature has got to be Birds of Paradise because 1 mana, tap for any color of mana, helps me cast my fusion elemental. There you go.
I was having a
Yeah,
pretty nice
that's that.
relationship with the
I would love it like you're sitting down to play like competitive modern or even legacy, and you put out the Birds of Paradise and they're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing, and then you build up to essentially use the Birds of Paradise to play the fusion elemental, and they're just like, what's going on?
That bird's getting
This
I'll
guy
try
played
that.
5 detached. Yeah. Like, what am I
Make
kidding?
sure I'll
Like,
test that
bird
one for
doesn't make
Denver.
it.
You should. Is the fusion elemental is not modern legal, is it?
I think it is.
It is?
Yes, it's Shards of Alara.
Oh, then it's definitely modern legal. Yeah. Although I doubt there's ever been a deck that plays it in modern.
Yeah.
No one's
maybe
going
not.
for the
Maybe not.
8/8 vanilla creature.
And why not? That's what Magic should be. Come on, people.
Okay,
That's
Timmy.
what it should be. Bring back vanilla
just-
creatures. Come on.
Yeah. So obviously you play the competitive versions of Magic, and we'll get into those formats. But do you also play, the most universal way of playing Magic, Commander?
I don't actually. I've played it before. I played it with those friends from high school because that was an easy way to play. But I just don't. Yeah, I just don't. Haven't really been that drawn to it ever. If I want to play more on the casual side, I'll do like a draft or a vintage cube draft or some other kind of cube draft. But I don't play Commander. I think it's cool.
Okay.
I think it's awesome for people that do play, but it's not really my thing.
Gotcha.
I like Commander,
Have
but for me, Vintage Cube Draft is the pinnacle of like casual Magic fun.
Yeah.
Limited is.
Have you
is my
played,
jam,
aside
for sure.
from the Vintage Cube, have you played other interesting cubes that had like any particular themes to them?
Not particularly. The closest thing to that was when I was 18 or 19 and just created a bunch of packs with a bunch of random commons and uncommons I had. I didn't even know cube was a thing, but I was just like, hey guys, let's draft. I don't want to buy packs, so we're just going to use all my crappy cards. And that was like a quote unquote cube draft before I even knew what it was. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Right now, the Arena Cube is up on Arena, and every now and then I'll check in with the Arena Cube, and like early on it was just like cards from like the last 3 sets, so like it kind of sucked. But now like it's got quite a few cards that you would want. The Onslaught fetches are there now. You've got all the Pain lands. They put the Titans in. Snaps in there, Liliana. I mean, like it's starting to feel closer to a modern cube. It's not quite there yet, but it's definitely better than it was in the early days when, like, I forget what was the first set that was on Arena. Was it? I know Amonkhet and like Shadows were over Innistrad were like kind of in its beta phase, and then I don't know if it was Ixalan or was maybe the first.
Might have been Ixalan.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, an environment where Ixalan makes up the majority of the cards is not an environment that, not Rivals of Ixalan or Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but Ixalan itself.
The original.
I feel like there's been
Ixalan,
Did not
many
like that
times-
set at all.
Yeah, there's been many times in Magic's history where it's like the current, what is it? Like the next set to come out is going to coincide with some big event, and they're supposed to like just go like that together. And often it's like the set that they have designed just like totally dive bombs into like this new launch.
That happened when they went from the 3-block structure to the 2-block, and then because in mid design for Battle for Zendikar, and the Gatewatch. What was that? Oath of the Gatewatch? Is that what that set was called?
Yep.
Yeah. They had gone. They were in the 3-block model, and then they switched to 2 blocks, and that whole block was a complete mess. Do you remember playing with Devoid and?
Yeah. So I was drafting at F&Ms at that point, and I remember I think it was like Battle for Zendikar. Maybe it was Oath of the Gatewatch. No, I think it was Battle for Zendikar. Green was just unplayable.
Completely unplayable. They do that every now and then where they'll just... I think where they often get in trouble is when they try to create synergistic limited environments where they don't put enough support in it. So you end up like with people like... I remember in original Ixalan, everyone would be fighting over blue-green Merfolk because that was like really the only deck that could really do things. I mean, you'd have to get really lucky to... even a mid-tier Merfolk deck in that limited environment felt like way better than vampires or dinosaurs or.
Yeah, that's always tough when it does that because I love draft and limited because you can do so many different things. That's
exactly.
So.
Yeah, it's like theoretically it's the best. It's theoretically I always say draft is the best format for playing Magic in my opinion. It's the way the game should be played, but it has to be backed up with an amazing draft set, and you don't get Khans of Tarkir all that often. An S tier. You're lucky if you're like playing a B tier draft environment. And I've heard of some real stinkers out there, and it's just like, just imagine like they roll out a new set and it's just like, oh, so this is going to be the next like 4 months or 3 months of drafting. I guess I'm tapping out for a time. It can really cause you to lose like momentum as a player if you're not enjoying the current draft environment.
What was your last draft environment that you thought was truly awesome?
Truly awesome? Oh, that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. I really liked March of the Machine. Okay. That was a really fun one. I wish I got to play more of that. I wasn't fully into my competitive thing as I am now, so I didn't play it that much, but I played a handful of drafts, March of the Machine. That was very, very fun.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to think what else I've drafted later. I've been kind of on a break from new Magic releases since Brothers War, I would say. Like I drafted a lot of Dominaria United and then dropped off on Brothers War. I think I just kind of got burnt out for a time. Actually, it's probably more
wasn't that also around the time we started
Fortune.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. I mean when we first designed X Seekers of Fortune, it was the only game we could play because we had to bang our heads against a very mediocre game to make it a very good game. So that's just like what game design is. If you're playing any other games while you're designing a game, you're probably doing it wrong, unless it's for research.
I do like kind of like coming in after the fact when they get. When the sets end up on quick draft on Arena and just getting a chance to like feel out the limited environment. Like I did Theros Reborn that way and Throne of Eldraine, the original Eldraine set that way, and enjoyed both those play environments, but didn't get to play them when they were the set.
Nice.
Yeah, Arena has just made drafting so much more accessible. I love it for that.
100%. That's what Arena's place is. I mean, you can't get everything you want out of it. MTGO is really still the only place to get like the Vintage Cube experience or Modern.
Or playing Legacy,
practicing Modern.
Yeah, Modern
Legacy.
as well.
Do you think Modern will end up on Arena eventually? I mean, right now they're trying to Pioneer on, right?
I think they are trying to kind of converge Explorer and Pioneer. Explorer is Arena's version, and I think it's possible. I think it's in the cards. But it's very difficult to say because Modern is such a huge backlog of cards. It would take them a long time, so they'd really have to commit to it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the older cards probably don't work well with the engine.
Could
Possibly. You think they would have really designed the engine to work with anything from the past, except for maybe was it Shiraz or things like that, like the cards that just nobody wants to see played.
Chaos Orb.
But I was going to ask, I almost had to deinstall Arena because when I first got into drafting on Arena, it was like I don't have the finances at this time in my life to be able to play as much draft as I desire to. So it's like one of those things. If I go in on Magic, I have to go all in, and I'm not at a place in my life where I can. But it's good to know that my drafting muscle can be itched, or my drafting can do that for me, and it's waiting there for an Arena.
I've been doing pretty well here because I started when they put cons on Arena. I drafted a bunch of cons, and that was like the first time I'd played Magic in probably like a year and a half, like limited Magic, and then. Now I've been doing the Arena Cube. I've done pretty well at going infinite. I feel like I've probably like 80% of the drafts I've done, I've got my money back. So I mean, it's been going far. That's the best feeling when you're just playing with the house money. When you're just drafting over and over again, you get your entry fee back, and you're like, all right, that's all I needed. I need my 5 wins, and I'm good to go.
Okay.
I
really should go for it. Yeah, I wonder if I'm a better player than I used to be now that I've actually gone under the hood with another game. Well, we can get to that here in just a moment, though. But I did have one last, what I called the Magic the Gathering astrology questions to ask you before we get into the next section, and that was, seeing as you're a competitive player, was it the psychographs that Mark Rosewater lays out? You were definitely first and foremost a Spike. Do you have a sub psychograph that you relate to? And we're going to expand this to also include, I believe it's Melvin and Vorthros. And I think there's another one that Danny just recently discovered.
Other than Melvin and Vorthros?
I thought there was. Maybe I'm wrong.
There's one I read about the other day, but I don't think I've ever talked about it on the podcast or to you. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like a hybrid one. But
can you explain to me Melvin and Thros? Because I'm just familiar with Timmy, Johnny, and Spike.
Yeah, for sure. So Melvin is the Magic player who's primarily interested in the mechanics. Like, they just want to play with interesting mechanics. I think they're the ones that... I think that they're probably related to Johnny, but they're less interested in, coming up with the crazy combo and more interested in just, playing with whatever mechanic they think is cool. So I think synergy decks probably are something they're into, but maybe not necessarily with the same sort of ambition that Johnny brings to the table. And then Vorthros is just like all about lore, like loves the flavor text, loves the art, doesn't really care whether the cards are good, just plays with what they want to.
I kind of think of... I was just going to say really quick, I do think of like Melvin. I think you kind of identified it, Danny, as like being what Johnny, but with like, more like a more concentrated or, version of Johnny, and Vorthros being like a theater kid version of Timmy almost.
Yeah, I guess that's
I love it.
Maybe a way of saying it. What were you saying, David? What is the verdict on your
so
subtype?
In that case, I'm a Melvin Spike. I love my mechanics. Like the 5-color was like, the 5-color is a perfect example of that. It's like, wait, there's a spell that costs all 5 colors of mana. I'm gonna figure out a way to play that. And it wasn't really about like comboing or showing other people what my deck did. It's just like, I want to make this thing work. And I've kind of always been that way about mechanics. I love when there's a new mechanic comes out that I've never seen before. It's like, whoa, what does this do? So I like Melvin. I like Spike.
What is your favorite mechanic of all time?
Oh, my favorite mechanic. That is a tough question. There's so many, and I like so many of them. This is a controversial one, but I really like Phyrexian mana.
That is
Obviously,
very
it's broken. Obviously, it's broken in some cases. So Phyrexian mana, I think it's great. I love having those options for how you pay for your spells.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool because it kind of reminds you that like life is a resource. So it could be unintuitive for a newer player to do it that way. but I think it's really cool design
What
space.
What is your favorite Phyrexian mana card?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I think it's gonna be, what's the green pump spell called?
When was it printed? Was it like in
It was in the original. It's green. It's 1 green Phyrexian to give target creature +2/+2.
Oh, I don't remember which one that is.
Mutagenic growth. I think it's
Mutagenic growth,
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of those.
Probably it's like the green's version of broken Phyrexian things.
My favorite Phyrexian mana spell is Phyrexian Metamorph. I love Phyrexian Metamorph.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's just so versatile.
Yeah.
Being able to copy the artifacts. I also love Clever Impersonator just because it can hit anything, but that's obviously not a Phyrexian card. But
Yeah.
yeah, Phyrexian Metamorph. I don't
Vintage Cube
pass it.
staple.
Yeah, it's just so versatile, and being able to like cast any creature on the field for 3 colorless mana is pretty solid.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love that card too.
Yeah, so that's for me. I think that my favorite mechanic is Storm, just because I love the feeling of like, are we going to do this? Like, is this going to happen, or are we going to completely just fall flat on our face? And like trying to pull together like a Storm deck in a vintage cube, and like trying to get the pieces, and like how good is it going to be? Because it can be amazing, or it can be complete garbage, and you don't know until like that third pack. But it's like, are you going to get the turnabout? Are you going to get enough rituals? How are you going to put it all together? It's such a delicate balance. There's like a recipe for a nice Storm deck, right? Like your card draw, right. your mana production, your payoffs. It's a fun.
I love Storm.
Puzzle. Yeah.
I've timed out more times than I care to admit on Magic Online playing it in Vintage Cube, but I love Storm.
Yeah, the number one cause of people losing in Storm is they just time out trying to go.
Well, I mean, if we're all offering our favorite Magic mechanics, I think mine would be also a controversial one. I think we all choose controversial ones, the ones that they probably will never print again, or will be very guarded to do it. And Delve, I would say, my first modern deck involved,
I like that one too.
Treasure Cruise. I just love the idea. Like, if life is a resource, I do think the graveyard should be a resource. And whether you're, I love decks and Commander. I think one of the best strategies to go with is recursion. Getting to cast your spells again from the graveyard is amazing. But if you're in, modern Legacy, things like that, using your graveyard as like mana or some other resource is just heaven, because then it's like your game board is bigger than it was, because especially when you first start playing Magic, the graveyard's just the graveyard and you rarely interact with it. But as you get further and further along, when you start considering the graveyard like dredge as being part of the whole equation, and it's a new variable, I just love that. And I think Delve is just the cleanest way of doing it.
From a game designer perspective, like one of the things with X Seekers of Fortune that we've spent a lot of time on is like how to find the right marriage between flavor and mechanics, so that the mechanics evoke the feeling of something, And so just hearing you talk about Delve and graveyard shenanigans, it's like, I would love to design a card where the card had flashback, but its flashback cost had Delve. And so like the flavor is like it's absorbing everything else in the graveyard to bring itself back out. And it's like, well, flavorfully, what is that? Like it just seems like a really interesting Modern Horizons card. That's the only place it's going to get printed.
That sounds very Dragon Ball Z to me for some reason. Like, oh, I'm so defeated, I'm so worn down, but somehow that makes me stronger. Yeah. Very Vegeta. Yeah. Okay, so I was going to suggest, I wanted to now focus in on your path, Shank, into the Pro Tour. And I'm calling this the Road to Plory, which is Pro Glory.
Glory?
Road to
Plory.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we've kind of covered this basic topic or this basic question, but like just to synthesize it, just, going into this section is what drew you, especially most recently when you started taking it seriously, what has drawn you to competitive Magic?
That's a great question. So
Could it have been the
I
Pokemon theme song
described-
playing in the back of your head?
I do have that. That's my new motivation. But I described this to a friend recently where in a game of Magic, you have so many decisions. It's almost like you have a lifetime full of decisions because there's so many. And when you're playing competitively, the stakes are higher. So you're more tuned in to that life. So it's almost like when I play competitively, I have the privilege of living all these different lives within a very short period of time. So it's so amazing, so draws out my attention, my love for the game. And there's almost nothing like it for me.
How long have you been playing competitively? Like, what was the format that you first started playing competitively in? And has it always been, is it just whatever you need to play for the tournament? So, like, if it's a standard tournament, you're going to prep standard, or do you prefer to play modern? Like, how is that?
So I've always been a limited player. And that is one, because when I first played draft, I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to do this all the time. And secondly was just, I saw how much a standard deck cost and I saw how much a modern deck cost. And I was 18. I was like, I can't afford this. I can't buy this. So I'll just play draft. So let's fast forward a little bit. So I was drafting at modern F&Ms senior years of high school. Then went to college. I was 19. I played a little bit online in college through Magic Online. Magic Arena wasn't around yet. So I was doing some drafts on Magic Online. And then this summer, after my freshman year of college, I wanted to play in a Grand Prix. And so there was Grand Prix Montreal, which is Montreal. So I grew up in northern Vermont. So Montreal, Canada, is only a couple hour drive from where I lived in Vermont. So I went home for the summer, stayed with my parents, worked part-time as a dishwasher, and trained for that, quote unquote, trained for that Grand Prix. I was just grinding Magic Online drafts of Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, because that was the format for the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And I actually, in that Grand Prix, this first ever high-level competitive event, I went 10-1-1 on day one, or X1-1, maybe it was 8-1-1. So I made day 2 of that Grand Prix.
Wow.
And after that, I kind of dropped off on competitive Magic a bit because it's like, oh, this is great. I didn't win any prizes or anything. So making day 2 was kind of the accomplishment. But then it was like I had this big win, but I didn't really have a next step. I was going back for my sophomore year of college. And it hasn't really been until the past few months for me where I've gotten back into competitive Magic in a serious way. I've always drafted at stores and like watched a lot of pro players play on YouTubes to try and keep a bit of my edge. But this is recent for me.
What was like the moment when you decided, hey, you know what, like, I want to give competitive Magic a go. I'm tired of just working and watching Magic. Like, I'm going to go all in on pro Magic.
Yeah, it's a really good question. In the back of my mind, I've always wanted to do it since I was 18. Like I talk about this in my content. Since I was 18, it was a dream for me. But it always just felt like a dream. It didn't feel like something that I could realistically accomplish. And a big part of that was, for me growing up, I was really raised to prioritize education. So that's what I prioritized. I prioritized my grades. I really focused on school, getting into a good college. And in my mind, it was like, I'll get into a good college, and then from there, I'll get a good job. And then my life's set, because that's kind of what I was taught. And I was never really happy on that track. I tried different classes. I tried kind of exploring different majors and different careers post-college. But I never really found what was satisfying to me. And so that's when I was really looked in the mirror and said, hey, if I was choosing for myself, what am I going to choose for myself? And that's when I switched to this new track of playing Magic competitively and also being an entrepreneur to support and make that a possibility for myself.
Who is your favorite pro Magic player? Like, who do you like to watch?
That's a really good question. That is a really good question.
Because I'm sure, I was just going to say, I presume that you're like the one that you think plays the best might not necessarily be the funnest to watch. I mean, the gulf between being an entertainer and a good player, those aren't mutually exclusive skills.
Yeah, so there's a couple kind of more common answers I was thinking about, but I'm going to go with one that's probably a little less common. Shota Yasuoka.
I haven't watched Shota play online.
He's a Japanese player. Believe he's been in the Hall of Fame for sure 8 or 9 years now, and he plays so fast and he's so skilled. It's just amazing to me because I'm a much slower on the spectrum, and I think about all my decisions. But he plays like lightning fast, and he's a master of control decks. I love to watch him play.
Yeah, Shota's amazing.
He's aggressively a control player, I guess.
Yeah, he is very aggressively a control personality, or for deck choices at least.
Oh, I'm sure his fast play is probably also part of his strategy. You know, once you get up to that level of play, you almost have to, you're playing your opponent like an instrument just as much as you're playing the deck like an instrument. So I'm sure that's part of his intimidation. It's like, I'm playing fast, so you should play fast. So make your decisions quick, buddy. It's like he's setting the tempo literally.
Could be, yeah.
Even if you don't say it, like if your opponent plays very fast, you feel obligated to play at their pace. And if you haven't like developed that sort of like steel of like, I don't care what you're doing over there, I'm not going to pay attention to what you're doing there unless it's like strictly something that is game related. Even paying attention. I mean, there's the famous settle the wreckage play that LSV did where he like goes to pretend he's writing it, and the person thinks, okay, well, it's obviously safe to attack. He's already going to write down his life deduction, and then as soon as he declares attacker, the pen comes down, settle the wreckage, complete blowout. So you got to be really careful of reading too much into what your opponent's doing. And I think like the dynamic of fast play and playing a control deck has to be very difficult for people because you don't expect someone who's like a master of control to play that fast. They're usually like way more methodical and like they're thinking through every decision and they're slowly, but like you're like, okay, back to you, and then like you play and then it's like counter, removal, like whatever, like that's got to be like keeping people off balance hugely. So
totally. If I played him, I would probably be like stumbling all over the place, like be so nervous. But
yeah, you get you out of your comfort zone.
Get me out of my comfort zone.
Maybe this is where your game needs to develop, especially in it's so different, I think, for people these days because a lot of people are probably grinding in the computer space, the digital space, where they're not seeing their opponent. They just see, all they can see is their opponent's roping or not. But, there's, Magic the Gathering is meant to be played face-to-face. So there's probably a lot of people who aren't developing their face-to-face, like, skills, like, their body language, looking for tells, things like that.
Have you played against any pros yet?
Absolutely. So I think I have online. I'm not positive, but I've been playing in modern challenges on Magic Online, which are these weekend tournaments, pretty high stakes. Like only people who are coming there to compete at the highest level will play in those tournaments because it's high barrier to entry and they're very long, grueling tournaments and the prize pool is big, the entry fee is big. So I have played in a modern challenge where I saw pros like Nathan Stoyer, Carl Sarop, Pro Tour. Nathan Stoyer has been a Pro Tour champion and the world champion. Carl Sarop, Pro Tour top 8er. Aspiring Spike was in that tournament. Like multiple pros. Any of the usernames I played against, I didn't recognize those, but I'm assuming the people who were playing at that tournament were in the pro or close to pro level. So I kind of assume so in that setting.
I had one match on Arena during, what was that set? The Commander Boulder's Gate set that came out.
Okay.
There. And I was paired against LSV, and he steamrolled me. It sucked so bad because it was, like sometimes you just don't get to play Magic because you're just like draw. Like, and it's like I finally get a chance. I know I was going to lose anyway, but like I wanted to at least have a chance to play that match, And it was like, why this game? Do I have to just not even, have an opportunity to cast spells? It was like,
Was it too few lands or too many lands?
It was too few. Yeah, he had me dead on like turn 3, and I was like stumbling to,
That's crazy.
Yeah. But
That's a shame. Real shame.
I hope to play against pros. I want to beat pros.
Oh, you will.
Beat them.
You want to beat
It's a matter
pro.
of time.
Yeah.
I want to be the best pro.
Well, so on the pathway to becoming the best pro, we should probably, for the uninitiated, maybe we should lay out what are the path or the steps that you have to take if you're trying to get to the Pro Tour. What do you have to do along the way to get there? And so you can understand your journey.
So the most common path, which is the path that I'm on, is playing paper in person. So I started by playing in an RCQ, that stands for Regional Championship Qualifier, and those are tournaments that are held at local game stores all over the world. So I played one. I'm here in Portland, Maine. I drove out to southern New Hampshire to play one. It was Lost Caverns of Ixalan Limited. So sealed, 5 rounds of Swiss sealed, and then cut to a top 8 draft. So
Okay.
played in that, was like 7-hour tournament with 25 other people, and I beat them all. I got first place, and I had to do that because only one person from that tournament was going to be invited to the RCs. Now that's how it is for most RCQs. They're usually one slaughter, so you have to be first to get invited.
Wow.
Now that I won that tournament, I'm going to RC Denver in a week. So that is the regional championship. So by regional, it means United States as a region, because these happen all over the world. So this regional championship is kind of like a semi-professional tournament. It's not the Pro Tour, but it's one step before. So this regional championship in Denver is going to be around 1,000 players, and the players in the top 32 of that tournament will get invited to the Pro Tour. The top 2 from Denver will additionally get invited to the Magic World Championship in Las Vegas this fall. In addition to that, there's a bunch of prizes on the line, 130K total prize pool for RC Denver.
Wow. What is the next Pro Tour? Do you know, do you have to do you get invited to a specific one, or do you just get to, okay. Do you know where it's going to be yet?
So it'll be Pro Tour Thunder Junction.
Where's
and that?
that?
Will be Seattle.
Australia?
Thunder Junction's in
It sounds like
it's like their
sounds like an
Cowboy
executives
set.
of fortune.
Yeah.
So the set is called Outlaws at Thunder Junction, and that will be in Seattle, I think, in April, because there's actually Pro Tour Chicago, which might be this weekend actually, or maybe next weekend, for Murders at Karlov Manor.
Oh, okay.
So Seattle would be after Chicago.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Now that's the Thunder Junction. That's the set that they described as being like a racetrack that crosses multiple planes of existence or something like that.
That sounds right. I haven't delved too deep into what it's about, but it sounds like Western expansion kind of theme to me.
Yeah,
it's like I was thinking Mad Max.
It's like a gunslinger.
That would be
feeling.
cool too.
Yeah. At least the art that they released is like Oko as a gunslinger.
Well,
They were
not a
Oko, not
gunslinger.
our
There's
Oko.
never guns in Magic the Gathering. Let me see if there's anything we're kind of missing here. I guess I was going to ask you about, well, that's actually interesting enough where I would love Danny to be back for it. But basically, I'll just state the pathway seems so. It's like, what'd you say? It's the regional PTQ Pro Tour and then champions.
So it's the
Is
RCQ.
that like kind of the arc? RCQ.
The RCQ is the ones at like the local game stores. Then there's the RC, which is Denver, and then there's the Pro Tour.
Okay. And then there's the Pro Tour. That's actually pretty simple. I don't know why, but when I was, and we're going to get into like the before era when Danny gets back, but when I was like kind of flirting with the idea of like trying to take Magic the Gathering more seriously and actually go to real events, I remember feeling like it was just convoluted. Like, oh, you have to go to these kind of events and earn these kind of points in order to apply to be at other events where you can then become eligible for the Pro Tour. It seems like possibly it's streamlined, or possibly I just never really understood it.
No, I think that's accurate.
Okay. Well, now that Danny's back, we can kind of get into that question, and that I actually want to ask, and more formally. The Pro Tour was dissolved and shut down a few years ago. I remember hearing about that. I wasn't in Magic the Gathering at the time, but I remember hearing that and kind of thinking, Wizards, how could you? And then they obviously realized that they couldn't, and they brought the Pro Tour back. So how has it, from your knowledge, how has it changed from what it was before, and what it is now that's been resurrected?
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on this question because I also wasn't in Magic when it was dissolved or when the MPL was active. But my understanding is that before, Wizards of the Coast had much more involvement, both in the Pro Tour, but also the events leading up to it. So there were things called Pro Tour qualifiers, which are kind of the equivalent of the RC, I suppose. But there were also preliminary Pro Tour qualifiers, which were the local game store ones, as I understand it. But then, in addition to that, you had these Grand Prix. So, for example, when I went to Montreal to play in my first big event, that was a Grand Prix. Those don't exist anymore. And those were a way to get, 500, 1,000 people together playing this really big event, have maybe a 20, 30K prize pool, so the first place gets something nice. And I think also if you got top 1 or 2 at one of those events, maybe you got invited to the Pro Tour, or you got pro points, so you were you had more options, I think, earlier on in terms of how to get to the Pro Tour. And there were also things like nationals and regionals, which were like in states. So you had like each state kind of had a big tournament every year. And I believe all those kinds of medium-sized tournaments were supported by Wizards of the Coast, and they no longer exist.
Is the MPL still a thing?
MPL is not a thing anymore.
Okay.
So MPL was when Pro Tour drastically changed. They changed the name even, and all of the highest level pro play was on Magic Arena. And there were only like 20 to 40 players in the MPL, and everyone else was kind of sidelined. So actually the players in the MPL got paid very well. And it was actually a full-time career. Like, it was sustainable. If you could be in the MPL, that was a career, and like a good one too. You're making pretty decent money, but it was incredibly hard for anyone outside of that to break in, which was kind of the death knell for the MPL. So then they switched back to Pro Tour revamped, which is what I'm trying to get to now.
Is with the rebirth of the Pro Tour, have they brought back like Platinum Pros and Gold, Silver? Is that still something of the past?
No, they don't have that anymore. So as I understand it, those different tiers would get you different level of benefits, like getting your travel paid to go to different tournaments. And also, I think if you're a Platinum, you actually got paid just to participate in the tournament. And to my knowledge, they don't have anything like that now. All the pro players have to support themselves to get to the tournaments and compete.
Yeah. I'm not sure I fully understand. I'm sure there's a lot of good arguments inside the walls as to why they shouldn't do that anymore, but I've always felt like that system really brought people to the game and made even more people feel like the dream of being a professional Magic player was something that was attainable on some level, even if it was just being a silver pro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I think that for us, one of my big goals for X Seekers of Fortune is making sure that the organized play system is something that players feel like is worth engaging in, because they feel like, hey, I could make money doing this. I could have a fun lifestyle doing this. I can travel. I can participate in cool things. I can make some money. And it's sad to me that like that's gone away from Magic in the way that it did. And, you know, I think, you know, everything's from the best intentions, right? I think ultimately, I think that they really wanted to try to pivot towards esports, and makes sense in the age of Fortnite and, you know, everything going on, that you would want to have a more digital, you know, game experience for the highest tier of competition. But it felt like the end of an era in Magic that, you know, was really special. And you know, I trust Huey, so I think like the Pro Tour coming back under his sort of you know, guidance, I think is probably going to be a good thing. But just unfortunate that it's not as great as experience, you know, as it was in the past. You know, it was expensive, I'm sure, but it was super cool.
I'm going to step out on a log here. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like maybe now there's going to be potentially more pros, but they're going to have to like figure out their own ways of financing their travels and things like that. It's like more opportunity to get to that level, but less benefits to getting there. So you have to do it more for the passion of it.
Potentially, yeah. I'm not sure how the math plays out exactly. I know Worlds last year, 2023, was a very big Worlds. It was 120 players or something. I think the Pro Tours are still going to be about the same size, same number of invites. But then you also have these regional championships, which have good prize pools, which pros will just come out and play those because if they're close, because it's just such good prize pools. So in a way, I think you're right. Maybe it's a bit easier now, or maybe I should just say there's more opportunities to qualify for the Pro Tour now. But totally the benefits aren't there. Like you don't get paid to travel, which is probably the biggest expense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very prohibitive for a lot of people. I mean, it's just hard enough to find time to take off if you're trying to, you know, squeeze playing competitive Magic at that level into having like an ordinary life where you're working.
Yeah, totally.
I had a couple of questions about self-assessment of yourself as a Magic player, if I could.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a few different categories here, and if you could just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like, not great, to 5, like, I think I'm pretty sharp here. So how would you rate yourself as a technical player?
4.
Okay. How would you rate yourself as somebody who can build a deck from components? You know,
Constructed or limited?
Constructed.
Both. 2.
How would you rate yourself as a limited player?
5.
Just 5. How would you rate yourself as a person who can read the meta and pick the right deck to play in the meta?
3.
How would you rate yourself as somebody who can read their opponent and play the match, you know, against their opponent as opposed to just the matchup?
3.
Okay. I think that's a good assessment. It's a good place to be. So brewing your own constructed decks is really like the place where you're like, that's not my forte at the moment.
I would love to say 5 for that category, but
I think it's the hardest category because, I mean, when you think about it, the constructed environments tend to coalesce around just a handful of decks. And so given how many Magic players there are, to be able to brew a deck that reaches that level of prominence, I mean, that's pretty rare to be that good of a deck.
Absolutely.
You could practically especially with the legacy formats, or like, I don't know, the non-rotating formats, it's like you can practically pinpoint the time when a new deck went online. Like I remember, like, and name the person who like kind of brought it to prominence. It's probably a little bit more of an open field for, what is it, standard. But I have to imagine it's like standard is like just a slow evolution. It's like, what we take the aggro deck that was in the last format and then take out these key cards and put in these key cards, or reinvent it because now aggro has moved from green to being more of like, white's thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally right. I think trying to brew in a non-rotating format is a Herculean task to try and go after. Some people can. Some people are good at it. I would shout out Aspiring Spike as a good brewer in Modern who's come up with some totally off-the-wall decks that see success. I think in Standard and maybe to a lesser extent Pioneer, a lot of it comes down to card evaluation. So when a new set comes out, being able to see something like Fable of the Mirror Breaker when it was spoiled and knowing it's good is like a really strong skill, because a lot of people actually did not expect that card to be that good and constructed. And so being able to see that, and then you just throw it into the existing red-black shell or red-blue shell or red-green shell. And you're not exactly brewing, you're just kind of identifying the good cards and then slotting them into existing shells.
I remember when Joel and I went to GP Dallas several years ago. It was Magic Origins Limited, and
I played Magic Origins.
Everyone, it was still at that point. It was like right at the moment when people were starting to realize, hey, Jace Vryn's Prodigy might actually be a good card, because everyone dogged it when it was first spoiled, and then it quickly shot up from being like $1 to like $80-$90 per card. I remember people just like scouring the GP for those cards. So, but yeah, sometimes the community just misevaluates a card, pretty hard.
It's tough.
Oh, for sure.
It's a tough skill.
I remember misevaluate. I saw, what was it? The person who turns, the planeswalker who turns things into elks.
That's Oko.
Oko.
Yeah, I always,
Crowns.
how do I forget Oko? It's the name of a character in X Seekers of Fortune. But I remember looking at him and just seeing his first ability and not even bothering to read his second ability, which is the biggest mistake you can make on a Magic card, is not reading the entire card. And I just remember being like, okay, whatever, this is just another lame planeswalker, because I'm personally on the side that there's like there's like maybe 5 great planeswalkers, and then most of them are kind of silly. Willing to be proven wrong. But another thing, and I think this would relate to the pro experience that I remember from the GP that Danny was it a GP, Danny? The Dallas?
Dallas was the GP. Yeah, we've only played in GPs.
GP. Yeah. The GP that Danny and I went to with our friend Patrick, I remember the entire time on the way up, I was kind of like in a place where I hadn't played a lot of Magic. I wasn't looking at the spoilers. I hadn't done my homework. And I remember, Danny and Patrick were talking like strategy, like, oh, if I get this card during the seal, I'm going to make this deck and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was like basically in, you have to wake up so early. I'm sure, that's like, especially at that time in my life, I was not waking up at like 5, 6 a.m. And then, you sit down and you have to just rush through making a deck. They're in this very weird environment with thousands of people.
Oh, yeah. It's
basically I had not done any homework. I just looked at the cards. I'm like, I don't know. What do I feel comfortable? I just went to my comfort zone, which is usually like, I guess like it's not a good idea to play this kind of deck in limited, but I just really fancy like, decks like a blue-green with like bounce, like tempo plays. So I just built that deck. But I was like, I don't feel like I made the best deck with the cards. And I kept going to Danny, like in between matches, I would go to Danny and Patrick. It's like, hey guys, can y'all know what you're looking for? Can y'all look through my deck, my cards, and see if I can make a better deck? And like my plan would have been just to make an entire second deck that was a sideboard and just switch out the decks if they found something. But they didn't have the time. We didn't get to like look at it. And then at the end of the day, they finally, like after all the matches are played, I've already washed out. I went probably the furthest of all of us, but I think it was just through tenacity of not dropping. I probably could have dropped way earlier. They finally looked at my cards, and I remember I had made this blue-green deck, but I had the components for an amazing white-black deck that included Gideon, and I want to say a creature. I forget the creature, but it was like the creature that Patrick was like aiming for. He really wanted to get it. It was like a creature that would tap down like just any other, like your like resource on your opponent's side. I forgot exactly how it worked, but it was basically like one of those killer cards, like, you know, a chase uncommon.
Yeah, he had an A tier sealed pool. It was like, he's like
a C tier
cards.
deck. Yes. And it was just, you know, but that goes to show, like, if you want to go to that competitive level, you can't just show up day of and expect to, you know, put together the best deck. You need to know what's out there, what's higher ranking on the limited list, you know, within the set itself, in the context of the set. I had no clue. I was just looking at the cards for the first time, and I just was like, oh no, I got a big blue creature, or I have a big green creature. I like blue green. Boom, just made that deck, and, you know, played some good matches. I still had fun, but, you know, like, in retrospect, it's like I could have day two'd if I had that. I could have had a chance of day twoing with that other deck.
I thought you were gonna say I went through the whole day with this okay green blue deck. Then Danny went through my deck at the end of the day, and he found 2 Okos in my sideboard.
Yeah, that would be man, having Oko in that environment was just like, give me wins. Like, if you resolved an early Oko, like, your opponent would sometimes just scoop. And
Absolutely.
I'm not playing
it's
this.
broken. It's broken in half.
That's when you know a card is heading towards the ban list. If it's just like people aren't even playing, you know, if it's an instant win, yeah.
Well, Throne of Eldraine had a lot of cards find their way to the ban list. Like,
It
that
really
era
did.
with Magic, there was a lot of cards that just, yeah, it was a rough period.
Well, so to round out and go back to, like, the more casual, fun side of Magic, before we step into our other topic of discussion, I guess, like, yeah, since you've been playing competitive, what has been your favorite era, your favorite sets to be back, to be out, to play limited?
My favorite era for limited.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the Shadows over Innistrad Eldritch Moon. I always think fondly of those 2 sets because that was when I played my first big tournament, the Grand Prix. And I played so much of the set, loved the flavor of, like, the werewolf versus vampire fight going on, and then you had these massive Eldrazi just busting out of nowhere. And the mechanics were good with the graveyard. That'll be my favorite for a while, I think.
That was a Delirium set?
Yep, Delirium.
Yeah.
Delirium's debut.
The cards, because I remember I played Shadows of Innistrad, and then I took a break starting with Eldritch Moon. And the 2 cards from Eldritch Moon that I still don't have that I just have always wanted to pick up were obviously, like, Liliana the Last Hope and Collective Brutality. Like, just for my modern staples, you know? But those still have not been cards that I've picked up. But I come and go.
I have a Collective Brutality or 2. It's in my sideboard of my Death Shadows deck.
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense.
There you go.
I haven't built a modern deck since I had built out an Affinity deck circa 2014 maybe, and so and has not been upgraded. It's, like, definitely still in the form that deck was in 2014. So, back when it was actually expensive to get Arcbound Ravengers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was a good era.
The biggest hit you can take is to buy a play set of something that gets reprinted, like, you know, in a Modern Masters, and plummets the price.
I think Mox Opal's still somewhat expensive, right? Like, it's not. They didn't crater the price on Mox Opal, did they?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think it's still like $50 or something, but maybe I can check and be depressed. I don't know.
I think the
Not sure if
Affinity
it's
deck.
still modern legal.
I doubt it is. I mean, that card is kind of busted.
Yeah. I feel like they banned it, and that kind of almost basically killed Affinity as you have it built. But then I think there's a new deck that has a lot of the staples in it. Last time I checked, there was, like, a decent aggro deck that was still was the new Affinity, basically.
Does it run Urza's Saga, or, like, what was that?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a Hardened Scales deck
I like Hardened Scales. That's a good
that has Hangerback Walker, Arcbound Ravager, Walking Ballista, and a ton of artifacts, and that's a strong modern deck right now.
I like Walking Ballista. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite cards too.
If anything, I want to say that deck is more deserving of the term Affinity because it actually uses, like, the Affinity mechanic, I think, a little bit more than
does,
Old
yeah.
Affinity did.
Yeah, Old
Actually,
Affinity.
that's not true. It uses modular a bunch. I don't know if that has an actual literal affinity card in it.
Okay. Yeah, I need to go back and look at it. I was eyeballing it every. You know how it goes with me is like every now and then I get a taste to play Magic again, and then I just spend a lot of time researching, finding like a deck that's like, that's affordable and competitive, and then I watch a lot of gameplay of it and never bite the bullet on actually buying the deck or going to any events.
That's how I was for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to remember like the build I had of Affinity, if there were even any Affinity cards in there. I think the only one was, I forget what the card is called. It was Thoughtcast. Is that it?
Yep. Yeah, the 4 and a blue Affinity for artifacts, draw 2.
I think
Sorcery.
that was the only one that I had in there. Because I'm trying to think, because the Arcbound Ravager just has modular, right?
Yeah.
And it was Sigil Pest. It was Springleaf Drum. It was
I love
what's the
Springleaf
other
Cranial
one?
plating.
Cranial plating. Okay, well that's not exactly Affinity, but it kind of is the same.
Yeah,
idea.
the +1/+0 per artifact.
Yeah,
Steel
I love that.
Overseer.
Steel Overseer. I don't think my deck. I think the deck was before the Steel Overseer build.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I don't think I had Steel Overseers in it. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it was fun to play at the time, and it was good. Like at least at like a local FNM level, like it was solid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember you doing pretty dang well at our store with that deck.
Yeah, and that was an era before Pod or Splinter Twin had been banned, and so
Oh wow.
There were definitely bigger sharks in the water to worry about than my Affinity deck at that time.
Well,
I
all
built
this talk about modern.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to say all this talk about modern, like maybe one of the last questions we should ask about Magic the Gathering specifically and the Pro Tour is if people are interested in playing the Pro Tour level, like is it still like what constructed still mostly standard, and how is standard working at this point? It's like 2 sets back, 3 sets back.
So it's interesting. The Pro Tour, the last few Pro Tours have been standard, modern, and Pioneer. And I believe this upcoming one in Chicago is going to be standard. So it's really a mix. Actually, no. Is the upcoming one maybe modern and the next one's standard? I'm not sure, but it's really a mix of different constructed formats now. Mm-hmm. And standard is interesting because they've extended it. So it's now 3 years, I think, of cards. 3 years of sets are now standard legal. So you have more time to kind of like use your collection to make decks. And it's not just rotating in and out like that. So.
Do you ever play competitive Legacy?
No.
If you got invited
if you were to play competitive, which deck? I was just going to ask, which deck in competitive Legacy would you bring if you were going to an event?
Probably something like Delver or Death Shadow, something like with really powerful cheap creatures, and some counter spells. That's kind of like what Team Rhinos is. I like that style of deck, but honestly, I haven't really followed Legacy because A, super expensive, B, they don't play it on the Pro Tour, so I'm not going to play it.
It's a big flex. It's like if a player is able to get to a level where it's like, well, I'll just screw around and play some side event Legacy or whatever.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade right now.
Well, hopefully someday it won't be. But talk about things that aren't above our pay grade. I'm calling this section the stuff we're going to post to TikTok. Shank, you've gotten a chance to play X Seekers of Fortune, the game that we play, and we just were curious as a somebody who loves competitive play. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts on X Seekers of Fortune?
So, as a Melvin Spike, I absolutely love X Seekers of Fortune because I've got my counter spell, I've got my disenchant. I don't have to worry about getting mana screwed because I get to draw a land every turn, more or less. I get to draw a Lotus Petal every turn. That's basically what a lead is.
Yeah, that's true.
And in X Seekers of Fortune, I feel like I'm always in the game. I think it's really well designed in that sense, where it has catch-up mechanics where your opponent can develop a lead on you and get ahead, but there's all these different twists and turns and just how the final quest is set up. This slows them down so you can kind of get there. So I love X Seekers of Fortune. I love the resource management, how all the different choices you have as a player of the game, and you have so much agency. And I think the flavor is good too. I think you guys chose a good setting that you were familiar with and kind of nailed it on the artwork.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that. That's promising.
Do you have a favorite? Well, speaking of that, do you have a favorite art or a favorite Action X card from the game?
So I think one of my favorite cards is the Thirsting Stone. And I forget exactly what it does, but I know it's good. And it's interesting because when I saw the original or the older art of the Thirsty Stone, I thought it was so creepy, and I was kind of afraid of the artwork. It was like this stone with a mouth, but no eyes. And now it's like a rock hand with a hole in it, and everything's glowing purple, and it's sweet. So I think you can draw extra Action X cards with it, and that's my favorite thing to do in the game. So I like that card.
Yeah. Action X cards that get you Action X cards are probably the best Action X cards. Just like in Magic, card draw. It's probably one of the most strongest abilities.
Sweet.
I had one more X Seekers of Fortune related question. Danny, if you have any yet to come off the top of your head, but Danny and I have recently been talking about making a competitive, or not competitive, but a constructed format for X Seekers of Fortune. Essentially, making your own Action X deck and, showing up with that, or, before the match, maybe even every single match, constructing a new Action X deck that you want to play against your rival. Do you have any opinions on what kind of deck you would probably make in X Seekers of Fortune competitive, and maybe any thoughts about how you would like to see it formatted, or like deck construction limitations that you might want to see implemented?
Interesting. So this may be a controversial opinion, but I actually love that I don't have to make a deck for X Seekers of Fortune. I can just show up and play. And it's still a very competitive environment. You can still have like a tournament environment playing that way. I think if I were to construct a deck, I think I would go with something very aggressive and assertive, because from that spike mentality here, completing your maps you can't interact with that. I guess there's Outfox, but I think that's the only card. Aside from that, completing your maps, there's no way for your opponent to interact with that. So if you have a way to very, very quickly, on the first or second turn, get to the final quest, you've almost just won the game right there, because you just need to draw some leads at this point and complete your final map and you'll win. So that's probably where I would start if I were to construct a deck for Action X.
Somewhat of like an aggro plan. Like, how do I... It's funny because in X, we kind of consider the aggro deck and the ramp deck to be the same deck, because it's like, it's like the rituals kind of, it feels like you're just trying to complete adventures as quickly as possible. And so it's interesting. It's interesting right now because we're in the process of designing the competitive multiplayer environment, and this is the first set. Obviously, it's only the second set that we've designed, but it's the first time that we've done it with draft in mind. And so like trying to build different draft archetypes and like making sure that there's like enough crossover. It's definitely an interesting experience to kind of think about, okay, well, what are the different archetypes of strategy for X Seekers of Fortune? And, where do we expand to make more room for different strategies? So be interested to see what people react to when they see the next batch of cards.
Yeah, it's cool because I don't think I realized it until this Tuesday or maybe the Tuesday before, but the different colors of leads have distinct themes. Like red is kind of the aggressive color, and purple is kind of like draws you more Action X. And I did just that. It's totally over my head at the start, but then I was like, oh wait, these guys are kind of going for like different archetypes even within just the base game where it's all mixed up. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, we'll experiment with that over time, but it's definitely there. I mean, I think we wanted. It's so different than Magic, right? Because you don't commit to a color the way that you commit to colors in Magic. You know, like you're like, okay, I'm going to play this because I have to put lands in my deck because of the way you get a Lotus Petal every turn, as you put it. You know, it allows you to play different colors, and so really the difference between the different lead identities at this point is mostly about flavor and letting players like find the lane that they like to play in, especially when they're thinking constructed or drafting. When you're just peeling off the top of the deck, it's a little harder because you're just kind of playing 5-color good stuff, but it's not a bad place to be.
So to clarify, for constructed, players would construct just the Action X deck.
Yeah, that's
not the adventures or the leads.
Correct. Yeah, just
interesting. Cool. Yeah, that would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. I mean, personally, I think the draft kind of style that we've come up with, and I think we need to do some more experimentation there. I think that's probably ultimately where I would like to see the majority of competitive play go, is like drafting a deck before going into the game and then playing like the match with the whatever deck you drafted. But in the competitive sense, I mean, I feel like we do need like one extra layer of limitation, and one that wasn't suggested to us is every Action X card is kind of like a legendary. So if I were to play Follow the River and then you drew Follow the River out of your deck, you can't play it any longer. And so all you can use that Action X card would be for bartering or other like, payment type things. So I think Andy suggested that, and that might be the method to go in, because I will let you know, Tuesday Night X, Laird and I, the last thing we did together was do a quick constructed deck game, and
Sweet.
We compared our decks at the end, and 10 of the 15 cards, we decided to go with 15 card constructed decks. 10 of the 15 cards were the same. So I'm just like, obviously we've identified what our favorite or what we think are the best cards. So there might need to be some level of, well, I don't want to run the same cards as my rival because of this factor. You want to try to maybe, go outside of the box, incentivize diversity of cards, that is.
Yeah, I could see that just happening as you print more Action X cards, because as I understand it, there's under 50 now.
36.
Yeah, exactly. There'll be hopefully within 6 months or so we'll be up to 70. It'll be over that, because there's right now there's the base 36 plus Mimic Ancestral Dream, and then the 5 test cards that are in the environment. So that brings us up to 42 in the environment, and then there'll be another 36 coming with the next round. So that'll put us up to about 78 different cards. That'll start to make it a little bit more diverse, I think.
Yeah. I think we often talk about X Seekers of Fortune, like, eventually being like kind of a cube, like almost cube-like, in the sense that you show up, you can get together with like 6 or more friends and draft out, like have a big Action X card that everybody drafts out of, and then you can play one-on-one games with each other and do round robin, or play one big multiplayer match. And I think the number we decided was to get 6 people to draft out a 10 to 12 card deck would be around 72 cards. So if we can get up to like having about that many cards that all work well with each other and have synergies hidden within them, I think we could, that could be the box. You're bringing a box with your leads, your adventures, and about 72 Action X cards to play with many of your friends, like 4 to 6 players.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd really like to see that. And the thing another edge that I think X Seekers of Fortune has over Magic is I feel pretty daunted to try and teach my friends Magic. I've done it before. People who had never seen the game before, I've gotten them up to the level of going to pre-releases. But X Seekers of Fortune is much more approachable to me, where I could just sit down, you know, someone I know who's generally interested in games, be like, all right, here are the basics, and we'd be off going to the races. I think it has a lot of potential in that multiplayer scenario that you described.
As Jay Crane said last week, he feels like he could teach someone to play X Seekers of Fortune in 15 minutes at a McDonald's. You know, it was like,
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to be stopping by my local Mickey D's and seeing some folks play X Seekers of Fortune on the benches.
I would like to. It would be fun to go to a pre-release together at some point. I would, you know, maybe we can find our way up to Maine and go to a pre-release with you sometime.
Oh yeah, that would be very fun. Yeah.
Yeah, once we get the game released, we're going to have a lot of excuses to go to a lot of different places. So hopefully Maine, maybe not during the winter, maybe not even during the spring. I could use an escape from
Summer's
Texas during the
beautiful
summer.
here.
I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
so
down.
That would be great.
I've always wanted to go to Maine.
Nice. Well, Shank, I guess really quick, was there anything else we wanted to talk about with Magic, with X Seekers of Fortune, with life in general before we move on?
I guess I would like to talk just a little bit on my content and kind of like how I'm doing during the day in addition to playing Magic. So,
Sure. So first of all, I always like to ask Shank, where do you want people to find you? Lay it out right now.
mainly YouTube, and then also TikTok and Twitch. Those are my 3 platforms, and you can also find everything on my website, shankpig.com.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Perfect.
And on your handle, is it Shank_pig?
Shank
On those
_pig
platforms?
everywhere.
Okay, but I'm assuming the website is just Shankpig, one word.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to lay that out. And what kind of content do you make, and how would you like people to engage with you?
Yeah, so I have one series that I've been doing since May of last year called Card of the Day. So every single day I go over one card from the current draft set, the current most recent standard legal set, and talk about the strategy of how I would use it in draft, why it's good, the pros, the cons. And that one I release every single day, so there's something new. And then more recently, a couple weeks ago, I started another daily series that I typically release one each weekday, so Monday through Friday, and that's called Road to the Pro Tour. So that's more of like a vlog style, me talking to the camera saying, hey guys, this is what I did today on my journey to the Pro Tour. These are the cards I picked up. These are the matches I played, lost these games, won these games, you know, practiced this much, am talking to these people, met these pros or these local players, and et cetera, what I'm doing to prepare for the regional championship in Denver.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you really do have, like, the Road to the Pro Tour. It might as well be the subheading of your content right now.
Exactly, yeah.
I think people
Do you have,
who
like,
want to play
should-
competitively should watch you though, because I think it is good to see what it's actually like to have to grind at the lower levels. Because oftentimes people see content of people who are already on the Pro Tour.
Yep.
So I think it creates a lot of value for anyone who's interested in making this journey for themselves. Sorry, Joel, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, no. I just had a little flavor to add. I was going to say you should go on YouTube, find somebody who can really shred on guitar and commission them to make your, like, you know, montage guitar riff, you know, soundtrack. So you can just, like, every time that you do a compilation video, like, you can just have that music that you own to throw in under it and make it sound like a real, you know, rocky situation.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll definitely think about that. And to expand on your point, Danny, absolutely agree. I think it's a missing link in the content we have available to us now. I see lots of pro players playing and recording their videos, and also on Twitch. And I see a lot of people playing on Arena more in just like an entertainment sense. They're not pros, but they're very entertaining to watch and play Magic. But what I haven't seen is like the step-by-step daily tasks that you're doing to try and make it to the Pro Tour and what that's like as a human being, because it's very taxing. And so that's what I want to show the world and get people excited, is like, this is a real thing we can do. There's challenges, but this is my dream and I'm going to try and accomplish it.
Is there like a Pro Tour diet that you have to follow?
I haven't been. I just try and eat relatively clean, but it's a lot of fruits, vegetables, rice and lentils, and coffee.
There you go.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Rice and lentils, fruits and vegetables. That's the key. That'll make you a better Magic player.
There you go.
All right, Danny. Do we want to do a bit of key takeaways, Danny? Did you pick up anything particular that you want to underline from what Shank had to share with us?
Yeah, I think that, my number one thing is that I think just people should follow Shank on all of his platforms. Super insightful. If you are someone who enjoys playing Magic the Gathering and you're someone who thinks that they want to play more competitively, it's super valuable to get onto a stream that Shank's on, like if he's on Twitch, and watch him play, because no doubt he's walking you through his thinking, and it really helps you start to get into the mindset of like, what are the considerations that somebody who's playing at a higher level is thinking about, and also just understanding exactly what you have to do in order to progress up the ladder and play Magic at the higher tournament levels. The other thing I would say is like Shank is relatively new in his content journey. So a lot of the players that you're going to go watch on Twitch, there are so many people in chat, the odds that you're going to get reacted to are much lower. Right now, you actually have access to Shank. So if you join his Twitch, you ask him questions about Magic, you're much more likely to have a conversation, and that's going to help you on your journey. So if you have any interest whatsoever in playing Magic at a higher level, I would 100% recommend following his TikTok and joining his Twitches and joining him on that journey, because you'll gain a lot of value just doing that.
Nice. And I can wholeheartedly agree with that. And I'm looking forward to watching some of Shank's, videos, and hopefully maybe even inspire me to get back into Magic the Gathering. I still love draft, and I would love to participate in one in the near future. But if, I just want to let everybody know that if you love this conversation, please like our video on YouTube. We come begging, we come hand and fist for you to like the video. And while you're liking the video, while you're down there, just go over there and press that subscribe button as well. And ring that dang bell if you love getting your content, your Mega Moth Studio Super Secret Podcast content hot and fresh right out of the oven. Right as Will finishes editing, exporting, and uploading, you'll get that message to come and join us. So please consider that. And if you're more of a listener than a viewer, we are available on all of the major podcast platforms. Anything that catches a podcast, well, you can catch us, just like a shooting star in the eye of a twinkling child who wants to make a wish. So catch us there on your podcasting app.
I thought you were going for some sort of like STD kind of thing there at first. Cleaned it up.
Well, I guess so. The word child really freaked you out there, didn't it?
Yeah, I was like, no, Joel, no.
All right. Well, Danny, I don't know if you got yourself prepared, but I actually sat down and had enough time to come up with something random this week. So if you don't have something, or you're not like particularly like in love with what you have, we could save it for another week, and I can run the something random.
Yeah, you run it. I thought you said you were going to run it, so I didn't prepare something, but then I wasn't sure. So then I started preparing something while we were on the show, and I would much rather you to just do your thing. So.
Okay, well, Danny, just to make sure your show notes are closed, because I have it written right into the show note with answers.
No, I've got Shank's YouTube page up. I'm
okay,
looking
great.
At his YouTube. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me get into character. Been watching a lot of At Midnight recently, the clips online, and just like loving the game show format. So I just wanted to make my own little game show clip, show format thing. Okay,
what do we win?
So Shank, respect for me. Less. You win.
We're all about the value,
bottle.
Joel.
Yeah, you win this spray bottle. A key for keeping. Yeah, this is what I use. The weapon I use against Winston when he starts chewing my microphone wires. This is a key piece to my home security of keeping Winston at bay.
So you
Okay,
can win
okay.
that magical weapon of for feline, plus 10 against felines.
Winston Taylor.
So Shank, you know a lot about slinging spells, but let's see how much you know about slinging drinks. It's bar back to basics. The way this game will work is that I will name a standard cocktail, and you must provide me the base alcohol, which traditionally is vodka, gin, whiskey, rum, or tequila, and one other ingredient. If you can get it, you get a point, and if you don't get it, you get lightly roasted by me, your bartending daddy. So, are you ready for
Sounds
this?
good.
This doesn't feel
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, Shank, I'm going to start with you. And your first drink up, vodka cranberry.
Vodka and cranberry.
Ding, 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 Shank, you got yourself a point. Let me make sure I write that down here. I'm going to get Shank and Danny. So, Shank, you get 1 point. All right, Danny.
I already know how this is
I
going,
have one.
but that's fine.
Danny, I have for you the Aperol Spritz.
It's Aperol and Prosecco. And,
All right, Danny. Do you want to go for bonus points?
No, I'm fine without bonus points.
Okay. You're correct. It is Prosecco and Aperol with a splash of soda water and an orange slice for the garnish.
Yeah, I was going to say
All right.
soda water, but then I second guessed myself. Oh.
All right, Shank. Second question. You are tasked to make a whiskey ginger.
Say that again.
A whiskey ginger.
Okay. Never heard of this one before, but I'm going to go with whiskey as the base alcohol, and I'm going to go with ginger beer as another ingredient.
That is more or less correct. Technically ginger ale, but ginger beer and ginger ale are pretty interchangeable
All right.
at the bar. Excellent. All right, Danny. Your next drink is the illustrious French 75.
This is another Prosecco-based drink. It has, or it could be champagne, and it has egg white in it. And is it made with vodka? I mean, I can picture the drink.
Final answers, Danny?
I feel like it has lemon, egg white, champagne in it, and either vodka or gin. That is. I don't think it's gin
okay.
though. I think it's more neutral than that.
Well, that's not the way I make it, Danny, I will say. But I mean, you did get some of them. Technically, you did do right by getting 2 of the ingredients, but unfortunately, egg white is definitely off the beaten path of most French 75s. You might be thinking of a whiskey sour.
No, I'm pretty sure I've had a French 75 that includes egg white.
Okay. Maybe possibly just a local bar's like twist on the French 75. I have it here as gin, simple syrup, lemon juice, champagne with a lemon twist.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got close.
Yeah, I think you got close enough for... Oh, man, I might actually have to have come up with a tiebreaker, which I didn't. So, Shank, I'm actually stepping it up a notch for you.
Let's go.
This one doesn't have the ingredients right in the name. What is in a martini?
So martini, we've got dry vermouth and usually vodka.
Correct. Yeah, if you got the dry vermouth, I think you were going to get there on that one. Though I will say, as a bartender, often when people order martinis, all they want is like 3 ounces of vodka chilled, and they don't want that vermouth at all. Which
Oh,
I
that's
think
true.
is,
You
a
put the
shame.
vermouth in and you splash it out, right? And then you put the vodka in.
It's called a rinse. Yeah, that's how a lot of people like it. I personally like the vermouth in the drink itself, but most people, you'll just pour the vermouth in the cup that's going to, in the glass that's going to get the drink. You swirl it around, you dump it out, so it's only like just a small coating around the glass to give you that vermouth flavor. And Danny,
Sweet.
I have one more for you.
Oh, that's
Oh,
put Shank
God.
at 3.
All right.
Danny, let's see if you can. Let's see if you can tie. Your final drink is a Negroni.
A Negroni?
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
Negroni. One of my favorites.
This is another Aperol drink, isn't it? With the
Maybe the way you make it.
yeah. I don't know.
Can I help him out?
Yeah.
I mean,
know
if
one
Danny's willing to
ingredient.
let you steal,
Yeah, go ahead and steal it.
You got one ingredient's Campari.
Campari. Okay, yeah, I knew it was like a red, because that's red, right?
yeah.
Dark. It's a dark.
Yeah.
I thought it was Campari and Aperol though, so I guess I'm off.
Okay, well, I'm going to give a half point. When in doubt, splash some Prosecco in it. It's like it makes it bubbly. That's like a good way of tampering, or like jazzing up any drink. And the Negroni is gin, Campari, sweet vermouth with an orange twist as a garnish.
Ooh.
All right,
All right.
gentlemen, that makes
Okay.
the score. We have Shank at 3 and Danny at 2. So Shank is the winner. He gets the spray bottle that slays kitties, or at least tells them to get away from your cords because you need those to record your podcast.
You're gonna have to ship that, Joel. So
Oh
gonna-
my
I wanna
goodness! I'll
expect
ship it
that
with the
2
water
business
inside.
days.
Let's see how much water makes it. I'll fill it all the way to the top, and you show us how much water makes it.
I'm gonna need that before Denver.
and I think that you should fill it with a Negroni before you send it.
Ooh.
And then like
I feel like I could.
when the judges come, because I'm cheating, I just spray it at the judges. Be like, hey, stay away.
Yeah.
Yeah, magic judges are quite feline in their personality, their temperament, aren't they?
Why isn't it more of a thing for
don't know.
cocktails to be served in spray bottles? Like, I feel like I'm surprised it's not more of a thing. Like you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seems
could
like
go
it would
to
have been like a
Real question. there?
early 2000s fad for like what inside spring break areas. I could just imagine spring break people getting served spray bottles full of cocktails and just spraying it into each other's
Oh
mouths.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
in tight pants and halter tops or whatever was the fashion of the time. All right, gentlemen. Well,
All right.
so Shank, you've already plugged yourself and why they should follow you, but just to remind them in case they don't, they tuned out or they forgot, what is your handle and what are the main places to find you?
So my handle is Shank_Pig everywhere, and I'm on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. And you can also find everything I do at shankpig.com. That's just one word, shankpig.com.
Excellent. Danny, any announcements we have that you want to get in? Anything fresh off our minds?
No. I'm just wanted to invite Shank to throw some aggressive words at Jay Crane for their rematch, because Jay Crane's been talking a big game on TikTok, and I want to give Shank an opportunity to respond to. I know Laird weighed in. I think Laird wants another piece of Jay Crane. So.
I mean,
Ooh.
in case you forgot, Jay Crane, X Secrets of Fortune as a card game is both a game of luck and skill. So the more games we play, the more we will find out who the truly better player is. Let's go.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Shank, Jay Crane, rematch is on the way. Now, let's see if we can get quite a few games in under y'all's belt. See who really is the true fortune seeker. Well, that has been Shank, and this has been Danny, and I have been Joel, reminding you that you must start somewhere. So why not here? Thanks for listening. Theme music by James Holden, produced and edited by William Wymore.
Don't listen to Joel. He doesn't know how to make a Negroni.